Alright, this is the other end of the wire that we've been working on so far into the car, and it simply plugs easily into the gauge. Also, coming out of the gauge is going to be all our power stuff. We're going to have to try to find a switch source, an unswitched source, a ground, and if we want to tap into the, make the lights dim, we need to tap into a headlamp source as well. So, we'll start the process of trying to find us a switched and an unswitched source. And in order to do that, I'll be using a multimeter. And what I'll do is I'll put the black end of the multimeter to a ground, and I'll start tapping those fuses and seeing which ones are switched and unswitched. Okay, so for the purposes of our gauges, we're going to need a switched and an unswitched source. So, first thing I'm going to do is, with the keys sitting on the seat, I got my multimeter set up. I got my ground alligator clips so that I can hold the camera with one hand. And essentially what I did was I went through all of these fuses looking for something that would give me a reading on the multimeter. And I'm just not getting anything except for from this 20, 2.24, and from this 3 right here, I'm getting 12.25 volts, and the key is sitting on the seat. So we're going to keep that 3 in mind now. So there's our unswitched source. Now we're going to look for a switch source, which means we have to verify that it doesn't have power right now. So I'm going to come up to this 10 because I already know ahead of time what it is. So I poke it right now. It's a 0. Keys on the seat. Alright, 0. I like this guy. Nice and easy to access. There's nothing really underneath him. So if I wanted to put a fuse tap on it, let's go see what happens when we turn the key on. In the on position, you can hear the fuel pump. See the radio go on. Come back here, check the ground. All right, and let's go back into this one that I determined that I liked right here. And I'm looking through the camera. There we go. And I tap him, and he is got power. He is a switched source. So at this point, we have determined a switched source and an unswitched source that we can tap our lines into. Alright, so I'm getting ready to wire my 3 gauges. I got 2 gauges that are max toes. That's the trans temp and the oil temp. And the third one is my vacuum, which is not a max toe series. So the red on this one is constant. The red on the second one is constant. Let's see here, red, constant, ignition, dimmer. Constant, white is ignition, and dimmer, and black is ground. Okay, so these 2 guys are exactly the same. So we can get rid of one of these sheets. But I'm going to be very, very careful here because, for whatever reason, red is constant on those 2, but yellow is constant on this one. There is a red one, but it's ignition. Ignition over here is white, so I just have to be kind of careful and not make any assumptions. Now, the orange is the dimmer, and orange is the switch headlamp source, which is what we're going to do. All right. So earlier in this video, we determined what our constant fuse was going to be, and we determined what our ignition fuse was going to be. And we're going to connect all 3 into one of these expandable circuits, and we're going to need one for constant and one for ignition. And we're going to marry up all 3 constants and feed them into this, and same thing with the ignitions. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is the constants. So that's going to be 2 reds and a yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and get the 2 reds and the yellow and marry them up. So here are my 2 reds and my yellow all bundled up, and there's my butt connector, and I'm just going to put a little bit of solder on there and then I'll join them up. Use the wire crimpers there to crimp it down, but I've also put on some shrink tubing, and I'm going to put that on there for an extra hold. All right, we've done 2 reds and a yellow for the constant. Now we're going to go get 2 whites for ignition and a red for ignition. All right, I got my 2 whites in my red, which is my 12-volt ignition switch source, and I'm getting ready to put that on the next butt connector. Where's the butt connector? There he is. And I'm gonna put another shrink tube on there. After intertwining my 2 whites and my red, I'm going to mate it up with this much thicker gauge. And I got a good 10 inches because I need room to get from the gauges to the fuse box. So I'm going to go ahead and solder this up now, and I'm going to cover it with shrink tubing. Alright, going into the fuse tap, I just used the butt connector that went with the fuse tap, but once again, I ran out of red, so I'm going to use yellow, and that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to go ahead and put this over here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit that with the heat. Okay, we're almost done connecting these wires, and I'll show you what I've got. It looks scary, but it's not really that scary. I mean, you know, I'm going to put it in its simplest terms. Remember our 2 whites and a red? Well, he's right here. And then we've got our 2 reds and a yellow. Well, he's right there. Okay, got 3 oranges going off to the dimmer switch, and we got 3 blacks going off to ground. So really, that's all we've got. It looks scary, but it's really not. So here we go. And then moving outward, that's just going to go to one of our temp gauges. That one's going to go to our other temp gauge. This one is our vacuum gauge. This one is our vacuum gauge. The oranges, I wish I had orange wire. That's probably why this is so confusing. I didn't have any orange wire. So that one's going to go off to our headlamp switch. All 3 blacks. Well, that's going to get grounded. So this is what I put on the other end of that wire. Okay, make sure you leave yourself enough wire to get from the gauges to the fuse box. So 2 whites and a red. So at the end of him, we'll find one of these. And exact same situation for our 2 reds and a yellow. Our 2 reds and a yellow. Go off on a blue wire. Why? I have no idea. I didn't have any yellow wire. I mean, another fuse tap. So 1 fuse tap, 2 fuse taps, a ground, 3 gauges, and then there's one that I didn't finish. This one, the one that's left, for this last connection, I'm actually going to have to cut the line going to the wire harness inside the car. And I'm going to need to tap into it, so I'm going to need a 3-way connection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these 2 guys together right here. So those will go for the 2 existing lines. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 3rd guy right here, and I'm going to solder him on like that. And then I'm going to cover it all up in I'll cover it all up in electrical tape. And that will be my 3-way connection. I'll snip the wire, butt connector here, butt connector there. This will be wired in on my green line, and hopefully that'll be as easy as possible, and I won't have to bring the soldering iron down into the car. All right. By the way, I think you can get these 3-way connectors at the store, or at least online. I never think to do it ahead of time, so I usually always end up making my own. And when it's done, you get a nice, strong 3-way connection. So here's that last connection, the one that's going to tap into the headlight switch. It is taking a little bath in liquid tape so that I don't have any exposed metal, and let that dry for a couple hours, then I'll flip it over and hit the other side, let it stand overnight, and install everything tomorrow.